In the heart of the urban jungle, a unique species of Homo sapiens thrives. Identified by their common adornments, the humble hoodie, their peculiar yet endearing rituals involving ping-pong tables, and an astonishing amount of free coffee. The startup Homo sapiens.
I'm no David Attenborough, but I know a thing or two about startups. For example, did you know they don't run on coffee alone?
I'm here to guide you on an extraordinary journey. Our new Twitch series, AWS Let's Build a Startup. Together we shall observe how an idea evolves, grows and matures into a real minimum viable product. All of this within the AWS ecosystem. Whether it's the thirst of knowledge guiding you or simply your passion for free caffeine. Join me on this fascinating journey.
Hello, founders. How's it going? And thank you so much for being with us today. I am Giuseppe Battista. I'm a senior solutions architect. Oh, I don't know. Apologies for that. It looks like there is some sort of background noise. What is going on? Just let me check on here. Let me just mute this out. Okay, so I will be trying to going this. And again, apologies, folks. So thank you so much for being here. This is AWS. Let's build a startup. Please let me know if you also hear some disturbing noise in the background. But as of today, we have a very important episode ahead of us. We have our friends from Sinkove and from Cloud Combinator with us today. We are going to discuss about how to build a startup that is going to revolutionize the way that we do diagnostics. So I will welcome on the stage my friends in a few seconds. But what is happening in this show? Let's take a moment to just go through some announcements. So in a week from today, we will be having Lovable and Jeff Barr with us, our chief evangelist. So absolutely super thrilled to have these customers with us. Lovable, if you haven't heard about them, they're in the forefront of vibe coding innovation, and they are only the, I would say, the fastest growing startup in the world. And yeah, I'm super excited to have them. So next week at this time, which is 2 p.m. BST, and then it's I think it's 9 a.m. EST and 6 a.m. PST. I'm sorry, folks, on the other side of the pond. But enough with the chit chat today. So please do stay with us for our friends from Sinkove. I have Anton here. Anton, welcome. And hey, Pedro, how's it going?
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, very nice being here.
Yes, thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely, it's so great to have you here. And folks, I wanted to ask you, a question about what we could define a match made in the cloud between Cloud Combinator and you guys from Sinkove. So you have banded together to build something that is really remarkable, which is say a training environment where you can actually fine-tune 3D imaging or like let's say AI-powered imaging for clinical data. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Pedro, would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Sinkove, we've been developing these diffusion models on medical imaging data, and we had a requirement. We really needed to train these models on over and over in specific data sets. We had certain GPU requirements, some distributed training requirements. We reached out to some folks at AWS, and they connected us with Cloud Combinator, Anton, and that's how we started working together. We got some funding from AWS for Anton and his team to work on this for a while, and introducing our development and training scripts into the SageMaker HyperPod system. And that's kind of how it started. And we've been working on this for the past few months, and it's already working. And yeah, it's been great. It was a great few months working with Cloud Combinator as well. I let Anton
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a perfect summary, to be honest. What I want to add is that, yeah, AWS introduced us, and after our first conversations, it's like perfect match of what we really focusing in Cloud Coordinator on AI data on AWS. And SageMaker HyperPod, also quite new technology, and it came out, and it was the exact right fit for Sinkove and Pedro, just because Pedro and Synkove just don't have the entire time just to play with all the configurations for distributed model training, which is quite tedious task, and it's where HyperPod shines. And we help Pedro to learn about this technology and onboard it.
And apologies, I need to be very super clear here. I'm not how can I say? I'm not a super expert in distributed training. So can you help me break this down and maybe giving us a few examples on what the MLOps lifecycle is around the fine tuning and what does it mean to be distributed? Help us breaking it down for the folks like me that, you know, I'm a consumer of ML, but I don't produce this type of models.
Sounds good. So if you imagine how you usually train your models on your local machine, you just write some script, you provide some data, you click button run, and it runs. Oftentimes on your laptop, on your PC, it runs only on one GPU. And when you're training much bigger models, one GPU is not enough. Even if you just select a bigger machine, you still will have a limitation of a few GPUs or the size of a GPU. And it's when you need like a very big foundational fine-tuning element, you go for distributed model training. You basically pair up multiple instances together and you distribute your script amongst them. And in parallel, you train your model on separate parameters. And in the end, it's all combined in one perfect model.
So it's basically spreading the load of a very large model onto many different GPUs. And is the technical element here the VRAM, or like the memory that every GPU has?
Exactly. Yeah, it often acts as a limiting element on one GPU, but when you use distributed model, you basically sum them all up and you get just much more powerful supercomputer.
Okay, that's great. So it's like you can distribute this data set and you can do all of the calculation in parallel, but then at the end of it, there is going to be a massive aggregation, and that's the end result of the distributed training.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sounds great.
One technical element that I had to add, which I think is quite interesting, is that people have seen that using big batch sizes. So batch size is a parameter when you're training neural networks, that how much data you feed at once to the neural network. So having that a bigger number is better for stabilizing training. And in this case, feeding a big batch size in a single GPU is really hard. So that's kind of one of the parameters that are trying to optimize. This is especially useful in medical imaging, where sometimes you can only fit a single image per GPU for a given step. So so parallelizing, especially in 3D, is super interesting. This in 3D the dimensionality grows up pretty quickly, and this explodes the GPU memory if you try to fit too many images in a single GPU. So parallelization is paramount, super important.
Okay, that's really interesting. But I guess that it comes with a lot of other, let's call it like ancillary technical challenge, right? So I'm thinking about storage. I'm thinking about how you're managing the load, maybe distributed, or how these instances are actually chatting to each other over the network. So that's kind of an interesting challenge to have, I guess.
Exactly. And you can spend weeks or months just configuring that element. And it's where SageMaker HyperPod is the technology that you want to use if you don't have the time to configure it. And it allows you to simplify how you manage and set up and configure your cluster of multiple instances for distributed training. It allows you from basically have a managed cluster for you, and you can easily spin it up for your use cases. You can use Slurm if you coming from academia or you have experience with it, or you can select Kubernetes if you have a bit more proficiency with that one.
Okay. And so Slurm is like an orchestrator of the underlying compute, right? So you can create the tasks. So I've worked with few universities that are actually using it. I do not have hands-on experience myself, but what I understand of that is that there's a sort of an orchestrator that is going to dispatch the work, and all of that is going to be sort of kind of transparent to the end user, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Kubernetes in a way, but it's more like specialized towards academia, I guess.
Yeah, to an extent. It just looks simpler, and Kubernetes is quite versatile, right? And you can use it for multiple things. And it's where these a lot of features requires a bit of steep learning curve. And with Slarm, it's a dedicated element specifically for distributed training.
Oh, that sounds
this
great.
this university connection was a bit my case as well, because before Sinkove I was doing a PhD, and in my PhD similarly I was more familiar. I was familiar with Slarm, and so for me it was a nice transition as well. And she used that in SageMaker.
Ah, that's great. So basically the tools that you've used in academia and like doing your research, now you can just pivot on it and having it, running your production workloads. So that effectively you can transition from one hat, the hat of the researcher, to the hat of the builder in one in one easy session. That's cool.
Easily, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was more interested in maybe discussing a bit more of like the challenges that have brought you to actually build Sinkove, right? Because we do have a lot of historical data in medical imaging, right? But I think that we do not have the full picture yet. Can you give us maybe an overview of what you've learned and why you built Sinkove?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's maybe give a step back and talk about the problem that you're facing, which is every time that you go to do any type of research, you need to collect data. This data is very expensive in healthcare, even more expensive in radiology. A single data point can cost hundreds of dollars. A single image can cost hundreds of dollars. So it gets pretty expensive. Getting this data out of hospitals and clinics is usually a challenge because of privacy constraints, because it costs a lot of time, because of different infrastructure requirements. And I faced this before doing Sinkove. I worked on a few other companies, some big companies in the medical imaging space, and I was always facing a similar issue whenever we had an R&D project, which was like collecting the right data that we had that it required for that specific use case. And because this data collection is hard, one consequence is that the data sets, they are very biased towards specific things. So these bias, they can come from patient demographics, different acquisition protocols, different disease subtypes, and this is something that really harms the R&D project, especially in the medical imaging space. When you want to create a medical device, which is a highly regulated industry, you need to show the FDA or the regulatory agencies that your model is indeed working well across different patient populations. So that's something that we help our customers fix. So the way that Synkove is fixing this is by we create synthetic data to fill the gaps, to fill these gaps in population demographics, in acquisition protocols, by artificially creating radiology data, medical images that are really compatible with the research project that you want to do, but at the same time is diverse and introduces this artificial diversity to your data sets, such that our customers can do research a bit better and in a more in a faster way, because doing this generation takes literally minutes or seconds, depending on the amount of images you get. Is more on demand, and the data is often more standardized across the dimensions that you want. So that's kind of our main value proposition for this problem of collecting data which is really hard, especially these biased data sets, and how to fix that.
And so what I'm hearing is that, first of all, there is a privacy concern, right? Because we cannot use all of the data that is available. So in terms of imaging, but also in terms of what we would say like a PII, right? And maybe there's also some diagnostic missing information. So that's one of the main problem with traditional data sets, right? Then there is a standardization issue. That it's also across the various, I'm thinking like the various different clinical institutions or the different universities. Okay, so like the way that they are creating this imaging or like taking this imaging, in this case, I'm thinking of radiology, so we're talking about like X-rays, right? So they may have different protocols, and this could have maybe to do with spitballing here, resolution of the image or like the kind of contrast. Now I know that there are some. Okay, so that's the other one, and I think one of the most important is also the fact that despite the fact that we have I would say loads and loads and loads of historical data. Maybe this historical data was focusing on a very specific population. So we are, your end customers who are going to be the ones that are training these models that will help us do diagnostics, will help us do prevention, or maybe even I'm thinking of like a nano engineering companies in the future, maybe even like helping these engineering companies build models that can create maybe artificial tissues or anything that has to do with clinical research. So you're helping
life science companies developing drugs is another example that is super that could use our data sets, because they do use radiology data to measure how much a tumor has grown over time. It is in this direction always possible.
So this is what we call a bias, right? So our data set, it's either like skewed towards a certain population, or it's missing data from a different demographic, and that may have an impact on, I think, a massive impact on subsequent models that we're training or fine tuning on this data set. So Sinkove, apart from like solving the, let's say, the procurement and supply chain problems of the clinical research, is also helping out in like building a standardized platform where you can generate on-demand 3D imaging data, which is unbiased, and I think that's fantastic. And thank you for for spending your working time in actually solving that problem. That's really cool.
Yeah, I have a nice example which we actually published, which was our first project as a company, which was standardizing data from a Pfizer project, where they had data coming from different labs. We actually published on a preprint of this work already, and have on our website a blog post about it. And what we did was they had data coming from 12 different centers, if I'm not mistaken, but each of these centers, they were responsible for specific compounds they were testing. So this was like a drug development pipeline, and essentially the images they had, even though they tried to standardize, having like a perfect standardization, like a perfect protocol, is super hard. So there were different big differences in the batches, and whenever they are trying to run a downstream task, the model was pretty much only focusing on the different microscopes, the different acquisition protocols, rather than the different compounds, which were the interesting targets. So we helped them create synthetic data, which would essentially, we generated for each compound, we generate images as if that compound had come from different acquisition protocols. And by doing the simulation, the model was able to learn the distribution not only across the different acquisition protocols, but across the different compounds, and that was super interesting. So this was the first project, and this was a very nice example of biases in acquisition protocols. But as you mentioned, the patient populations, like geographic locations. So We have a few customers who are located in Europe, and they have a lot of data from Europe, but they're interested in deploying these products in the US. And when they want to get FDA approval, they need data that is representative of the US population. In France, they don't have as many obese patients as in the US, for example. This is one example. So creating these data sets synthetically is a good way to solve this problem that can be super efficient for our customers.
Okay, that's fantastic. I never thought about the protocol of acquisition actually introducing bias into the data set. That's a really interesting observation. And I'm wondering, like, what other kind of spaces this is actually a problem that is affecting research. But we do have a question from Shigama, hopefully pronouncing that correctly. Shigama71. So you said you've been learning for a while about AI now. And you said, is it more important to actually build the models or to actually combine them together with other AI engineering techniques such as RAG, MCP to build apps? Any thought? And thank you so much for that question. It's super interesting that you're bringing this up because I think that a lot of customers are struggling with that as well. And I want to get your expert opinion, Anton and Pedro.
It feels like it consists of two parts, to be honest. So training models is one thing, and doing RAG and MCP and some automation with AI models is a completely different one. So if it depends what you enjoy. If you enjoy doing more back-end work or full stack, that probably RAG, MCP, AI agents is what would you go for. But if you're more into doing researches, or you go into territory where solving that problem isn't possible with just default foundational models, it's where you would look into like fine-tuning and building models from scratch. So just depends what you enjoy and what you really want to do. And I would go from there. Pedro, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. So in our world, you don't really. So when you're talking about RAG and MCP and other things, you're mostly talking about like using a model from an API from OpenAI or Amazon Bedrock, and in our world is not exactly that what people are doing, because the models are much more specialized. They are doing diagnosis of diseases, they're finding tumors, they are doing much more specific things that doesn't. We're not at the point of interacting with other tools, for example. So most of the models they need to be trained from scratch, and in this is more research direction, as rightly pointed out.
And I think it also has to do with like how close are you, or like which stage of you are in the supply chain, I guess, right? Because if you, I think if you're if you're building something for like very specialized and a very specific use case, then I think it really makes the difference to actually have a model that is fine-tuned and trained to actually do one thing and do it better, or like do it great. I think we'll have Julien Simon in a few episodes coming here and talking about how seeing what like their philosophy around like small language models, for example, and their role in like agentic AI, for example, like intent dispatching. So yeah, absolutely, I find myself absolutely aligned to this. But folks, we are almost 25 minutes in, and I haven't seen any actual intent of like getting our hands dirty. How about we fire up Sinkove and you tell us a bit more like what it does, and help us understand a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, maybe let me share my screen.
Absolutely. And while you do that, folks, please don't be shy. We have the chance to ask Anton and Pedro all of your questions about fine-tuning, or like maybe if you have any questions about Stable Diffusion, or like this kind of models that are for 3D and 2D imaging. I do have a lot of questions, but I want to absolutely give you the possibility to pick on their super interesting brain. I'm adding this to the stage. What is that? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so I'm sharing my entire screen because I'm gonna jump between our web interface and I'm gonna show very quickly our Python SDK where you can interact with these models using Python, which is more what most of our customers actually do. So here we have like some of the models that we currently have available. Most of these are open source because we put them public here. Because these are like open source models, and the intent here is really to make it very easy for people to try out how the generation of medical images actually work. So each of these models, so we have a few chest X-ray models because there are quite a few public ones. Sana is one model that we saw that works really well. And then here we have a Python, a model card that explains what are the inputs and the outputs and the system architecture very precisely. And one interesting thing that is useful here is this model ID that I'm going to copy, because then you can come and generate the data with a Python SDK. In our web app, you can also come here and generate the model and generate data sets here. But I'm going to actually show using the Python SDK because I think it's more interesting for a technical audience. And it's just a few lines of code. So
can I please just ask you to zoom in a little bit? Because I know a lot of our users are on mobile, and what we're looking at right now is some Python code where we have the integration of your SDK, right?
Exactly. So you just need to install Sinkove/SDK with pip, and then with four or five lines of code, you can already start generating data sets. You import Sinkove, you create a client with your organization ID and API key that you can generate in the web app. At this point here, you add the model ID, which is what I copied from the web app. So you essentially come here, get whatever model ID you want, and you paste in this line of code. And there you go. From a single line, you can start creating data sets. So in this one, you have a prompt, which is left lung consolidation. This is a model that is generating a chest X-ray with left lung consolidation. It's going to generate 10 samples in this case. We can press play here. I've already created a data set because this takes a few seconds to create. So this will be checking when it's created. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open the data set that already has been created for you guys to check it out, some of the images. So this is a chest X-ray. So this is the left lung, this is the right lung. These white spots, these are consolidations. So what you can see across these images, so I generated like 10 images here. What you can see is consolidation in the left lung, which is what I wanted to study in this specific case. These are all like different patients. One thing that is really important is you have diversity between the images you generate. Something that we invest a lot of time into is creating these images with like different, with a lot of diversity, because at the end of the day, we want to mitigate biases, not enhance them. We also like have masks for each of the images, of the lungs. And yeah, I guess that's a quick review of our SDK and our web app and things you can do with Synkove.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think I never thought, again, every time I see an application of generative AI, I'm like completely blown away, because I never thought about anything like that. I never thought that I could just like generate X-rays on my machine. That's wow, that's mind blowing. And I also have a few questions coming up, one from LinkedIn and one from Twitch again. So I will bring on Jay Liu. You will have to help me decipher this, Pedro, because I have no idea what I'm reading here.
So Jay Liu is asking, how does your data fit into the demands of MHRA? So MHRA is the agency that regulates medical devices in the UK. Class 2A and B evidence generation. Have you received any guidance on this point? E.g., is synthetic data acceptable, and how do you validate the accuracy of this data? That's an amazing point, and this is a question that we receive a lot. And we are often looking. This is one of the reasons Synkove exists, to be honest, is because generating this data is complicated and it's hard to build trust on it, especially as the regulatory agencies, so the MHRA and the FDA are creating a bunch of guidelines around how to better create synthetic data. I'm posting a blog post about this very, very soon because there are a few guidelines that came out really recently about what are the requirements for using synthetic data in medical devices for getting approval. One interesting thing is that I think even though we need to follow these rules, I think the outlook from the regulatory agency's perspective on synthetic data is really positive because they know that collecting this data is hard. So they're really incentivizing people to do that. And not only that, they are doing their own internal efforts in working with synthetic data. So the MHRA has the CPRD, I believe, who are creating synthetic data for helping researchers. You can go and use synthetic data from them, which is part of the MHRA. The FDA, similarly, they're publishing papers. They are creating synthetic data themselves. So I think it's a super exciting time because we are focusing very much at Sinkove in aligning with these regulatory demands. And we see a lot of incentives from them as well in creating these guidelines. They're interested in creating these guidelines. They're interested in having medical devices submitted with this type of data. So I think it all looks very exciting.
Sounds great. And again, Jay, thank you so much for your question. Please, folks, keep it coming. We have an incredible opportunity here to dive deep into and dissect the brains of these two amazing individuals that are guiding us into this fantastic landscape of generative. What?
Just
what was
to Petra's point is that we've seen a lot people trying to get the synthetic data in the specific field where to get actual data is incredibly hard. And it's where, yes, you have regulations in place, which probably a good thing, but yeah, we see a lot of places where you need the synthetic data, and radiology is one of them.
Sounds great. And another question from Shigama71. Again, thank you so much for your question and for sticking around. What's the opportunity of actually working in model training and app development? Do you guys have an idea? I guess this is more for Anton. Anton, you're coming from an AWS partner. Can you tell us how the landscape actually looks like?
Definitely. No, there are a good amount of opportunities, I would say, because it's a new emerging field and so many problems hasn't been solved yet. That's why, yes, if you're really into it, I would recommend you going there even deeper, because at least you have Anthropic, you have other research labs where you can go and work, and I believe actually Amazon and AWS where you can fine tune and train models like Nova. So definitely good amount of places where you can go and apply that knowledge. And also in specific fields, as Pedro doing here, into medical imaging, there are definitely other types of problems that you can solve in STLS type of startups. What I would say, I remember a question regarding AI agents and MCP. Probably there is more monetization opportunities in like these AI automations with AI agents and MCP, and when you combine stuff. But it's probably, if you just compare a regular software engineering roles where you have some software researchers creating new frameworks and just a backend engineers, there are much more backend engineers that there are researchers.
Sounds great.
Yeah. I would complement that in exactly the same direction. Like if you want to work, for example, in a medical imaging AI company, you're pretty much guaranteed to train your own AI model. As in a lot of other fields, protein, like a lot of these drug discovery companies, robotics companies, you're pretty much guaranteed to need to train your own AI model, as opposed to use like an OpenAI or Anthropic, or yeah.
Sounds great. And again, Shigama, you're most welcome. Thank you for your kind questions. So we have seen it in action. And folks, if you've been on the show before, you know that I love diving deep into the actual implementation of it. So Anton, I think I'll pass the ball to you. And how about we start talking about the tech behind this?
Amazing, definitely. So what I will show you is what we did specifically with Pedro and what.
Should I explain very quickly before how we the requirement, the need for doing this thing specifically? So each of those model cards that we have available on our website on our demo that I just showed was a model that was trained by us or like open sourced. And what we do is whenever a customer arrives to us, we create a model for them. So we create an individual model for each customer because we saw that that's how we create more value to them. We need a model that is very specific to our customers' needs, and this often requiring either training from scratch or fine tuning a model that was trained previously on some type of open source data sets. And therefore, one strong requirement that I had was automation of these training pipelines. We wanted to make it quick and easy to use and on demand as well, in the sense of we need a lot of GPUs for training these models. It's not always super easy to train these GPUs. So another advantage that we got from HyperPod was to have access to some training plans that were very beneficial. So this was the main requirement. Training a single model for each customer was a lot of work. So that's when we arrived to Anton to get a model running, get a model training, and create one of those cards for each individual customer.
Definitely. And what HyperPod allows you to do is that you can do the setup once and train any models that you want. You just provide model weights, you provide your data set, and you run it on the same cluster. So if I share my screen and show you how the diagram, especially for MLOps guys there, how it looks like. So basically what we have is on the right-hand side, you have your cluster of HyperPod, where you have a head node and your compute nodes. So you can have them, lots of them, and depends on your needs and also your budget. You can start with 2 and scale to, I don't actually remember, but more than 100. So having loads of nodes on which you fine-tune or train your models. And it looks quite simple. It's just because HyperPod abstracts lots of stuff from you, which is amazing. And you can relax and make sure that HyperPod just does stuff for you. You put your data set in S3 bucket or FSX Falaster if you want a bit better performance. So FSX Falaster is special type of storage on AWS, which allows very fast transition between your storage and also your compute nodes. And S3 is just a way how you can easily put the data into the FSX. And it's one of the biggest HyperPod benefits that it gives you this configuration between your cluster and FSX just out of box, just in a couple of scripts that you run already provided you by AWS. And it creates endpoint, and now you have connections between compute node and your storage. And it's what we implement for Sinkove. As you might remember, there are lots of data that can come in, and we don't want this network issue be a problem and limitations. That's why we used FSX Falaster. And yeah, this compute cluster consists of head node, so your controlling node, and compute nodes, so the ones that actually run in your job. And on top of it, there is native integration with our observability platform as Grafana, but there are actually much more, and you can select those. But what it does, again, off the shelf with little to no configuration, is you have a full observability platform in place where you don't need to worry about like providing your custom scripts, how you would monitor your performance. And it would look something like this, that you already have in Grafana. It's actually one of the screenshots from Grafana for that HyperPod cluster that we built. Is you have CPU, data load, RAM used, network information, and even like a temperature of your GPU, and how you loading them. Should you like increase CPU load? Should you increase GPU load? Should you do something with your network? Are you utilizing all the GPUs that you have in place? So the benefits of the HyperPod is that it's so easy to do so as that observability, like with no support. And if you've done Kubernetes, it probably took you quite a while to actually set something like this up. So getting back to the HyperPod cluster, you also can like integrate it with IAM Data Center, with access to Grafana, just quite easy as a separate portal. And that should be it. It doesn't look that impressive, but because it's so abstracted from you and it so simplifies the workflow for you, especially if someone from academia or you don't have enough time to play around with all this setup, just go to SageMaker HyperPod, set up this cluster one time, or get Cloud Combinator to help you to set this up and just provide your model weights and data sets, and you can use it.
Well, that's super cool. In the meantime, we have buffered a few questions. So from Twitch, we have a question about how expensive this setup is. Like, let's say if I were running 10K requests per day, few Kinelan. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name, but thank you for the question.
Definitely. I mean, if you do inference, you still can use HyperPod for it as well. It would cost you about you can start with as small as one instance. So you have one managed node and one compute node. So it would cost you as like 2 EC2 instances. Depends on the size that you're running. So, but again, depends on your model. If you're running something very, very big, you would need much more instances. So it depends. It's quite cheap. It's not cheap, but it's optimized for cost. So if you do all this setup yourself, you might need to be worried about how you do it properly. But in this case, HyperPod actually like optimizes this for you, especially if some nodes goes down. It has resilience built in. It will spin it back up. So you have this safeguards in place. Additionally, you can also buy something called flexible training plan if you're training your model, and it will just save you money on compute.
Yeah, and I guess the service in itself, it doesn't have a cost. It's just the actual resources that you're using. So
exactly,
what you get out of it is that this is all like tidied up and built up for you, and you don't have to. If I'm thinking, I don't know, if I were to run this on top of Kubernetes, that I don't have to like set up all of my services. As we were saying, we don't need to set up all of our observability. So that's definitely an interesting aspect. There's the AWS calculator. If you go to AWS, so calculator.aws, and you can have a ballpark of an idea of like what the underlying resources would cost, just like having a look at the type of instances or the type of GPUs that you would like to run. But there is another question coming from Joseph. It's really long, but I think
Let me get it.
I'm kind of, I don't know, just let me try this. Can I? Yeah, I can stay afloat there, but actually I think that this has to do with what we were discussing at the very beginning of the episode, and potentially the core reason why we do have well, you folks have started building Sinkove, right? So this is like if you are building a model that is going to treat cancer, if you're building a model that is going to help us discover new drugs, what happens if that model was trained on a data set that was biased? And Pedro, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is exactly what your bread and butter, right?
Yeah, exactly. What happens with those overlooked populations? I think this is the main question from Joseph, and I think what ends up happening is that in a lot of cases we know that our data sets are biased, and the thing that is really important, like technically for us, is to give the model this information. So essentially, by giving the model this information during training, we tell from which race, which population group each image came from. We are able to then, at inference time, generate synthetic data that actually mitigates this problem downstream as opposed to amplify it. So let's say that we have a customer with a training set with 1,000 images coming from a population and 10 images coming from another population. What we usually do is we get this population that only have 10 images and we amplify it artificially to have, let's say, 500, or we amplify it as much as we can, such that these populations match in the overall data set that is going to be used for any downstream task. But essentially, that's a great question, and it's something that is, our bread and butter, and we try to mitigate all the time. We have a bunch of different techniques to deal with that. So how do we? There are a few because some of these biases, they're harder to correct than others. So sometimes you need to come in with spatial cues or the fine-tuning schemes, but this is exactly, we just need to inform the model of where the data is coming from to be able to correct the biases when you're generating the synthetic data sets.
I think this is the way you rebalance the bias, I guess, right? So
Exactly.
You said that these techniques are all there to make sure that when you are generating data, say seeds from different demographics are there, because the risk, as it was saying, is that we might introduce into downstream models some bias that is going to skew the, let's say, the response of the model based on specific type of images. So yeah, I guess that's exactly it. So I just wanted to remind all you folks that we do have a SageMaker HyperPod workshop that is available at this link. I'm gonna paste it on LinkedIn and YouTube in a second, but there's a nice bit.ly link down there that you can just copy. That is fundamentally, I think, a way for you to move your first steps. But I know, Anton, you folks at Cloud Combinator, you run some of these workshops with your customers as well, because as we were saying, because we're are building a system that may be comprised of many GPUs. This might be expensive to run on your own AWS account, right? So I was wondering, Anton, can we do something about it? Folks on LinkedIn, folks on Twitch, let us know if you want us to run one of this sort of workshop, maybe live here on Twitch or maybe somewhere else. But please do let us know, and we can go through that with our friends from Cloud Combinators to give you an overview of how this actually looks like, to maybe train or fine-tune your own model. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Towards the end of the show, we'll also share a link where you can actually book a meeting with me or with our scouting team that is, by the way, lurking always in the chat. So if you have any interesting ideas for startups, just use the chat to reach out to our friends from our scouting team. But yeah.
As a partner, we host those Immersion Day workshops on specific AWS services from time to time, and we gather in signals. So the more you comment, the more you like and send requests to Amazon saying, "Can you please do this workshop?" The more likely we will host it.
All right, so we're slowly coming to the end of the hour for today. I wanted to ask you folks if you had any final remarks for our friends on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch before we actually go into final announcements.
Definitely. Pedro, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I would say, like, if you work in this space or are interested in learning more about synthetic data in radiology, definitely reach out to us. You can directly book a meeting with us at sinkove.com/contact. And yeah, very happy to chat and tell people more about it. We also have in our resources page in our website a few blog posts where we explain how these things work, some of the regulatory frameworks, some interesting papers that he reviewed. So if you're interested in knowing more, feel free to go to our website.
Highly recommend those blogs. I quite enjoy them.
Yeah, and I'm also pasting in LinkedIn. I will do it in the chat box of Twitch as well, and on YouTube in a few seconds. But we do have a customer case study that you folks have Cloud Community have published about Sinkove, and that's where you can actually learn a bit more about their story, the business problem that they had, and then all of the other links that we shared today. So we have a dive deep on distributed training, and then we have the HyperPod workshop. So yeah. With that, I wanted to thank you all for sticking around today. This has been AWS Let's Build a Startup. This is a 1-hour show in which we dive deep into the success story of interesting startup like Sinkove, for example, and our friends from Cloud Combinator. We stream live every Tuesday, 2 p.m. BST, 6 a.m. PST, and 9 a.m. EST. Apologies, folks, on the other side of the pond. And next week, please all come here, because we will have our friends from Lovable, only the fastest growing startup in the world. I'm so kind of stoked to have them around. And I wanted to involve some a very exceptional host. So we will have our chief evangelist, Jeff Ba. I'm taking him out of bed at 6 a.m. in the morning. I don't know if that's a great idea for my career, but it will be a great episode for you all. And with that, folks, again, thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll see you next week on Let's Build a Startup. Bye bye.
Bye.